Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this regularly scheduled Township Board of Supervisors meeting. Our first item will be a pledge to the flag. Please join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Your microphone, Mark.
Okay, so we did have an executive session on September 12th following the regular meeting to discuss collective bargaining. And I believe we are going to, oh,
That's the
that
one where-
is announcement of executive sessions. That is tonight. It's been a long day. So at this point, I'd like to open up the floor to communication from citizens. If there is anyone on Zoom that would like to address the board, click the raise hand button. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to address the board, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and address the board. Anyone?
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Jeff Herman, 3429 Druck Valley Road. Thanks for having us here tonight. I'm here to address the board and the folks in this room and watching on Zoom about the Druck Valley water line extension. It's been a very frustrating couple of days for us, being told essentially that we now have to shell out $1,500 for a service that we didn't want, that we don't need, and then we have to essentially sign up for a $60 minimum per month subscription to a service that we don't want and don't need. And if I were to say that to anybody else in this room and tell them they had to do that, they'd politely tell me to go pound sand. A number of us have grown increasingly frustrated. We're stressed. People are panicked about this because of the misinformation that we had been given leading up to receiving a letter dated September 4th from Mr. Hodgkinson, who I'd like to thank for talking to me on the phone so much the other day. I appreciate that time. People are worried about how they're going to pay for this bill that they didn't see coming. And they're also frustrated by the fact that months ago in May, we were told by the York Water Company, you don't have to sign up for this. We were misled and lied to for 4 months. 4 months is a long time to not have the proper information, to not be able to set aside funds to pay for something we don't want and we don't need. I know you understand the frustration. I know it's a law. I understand how the law works. I also understand that I'm talking to the individuals who can go in and amend or change that law. I would suggest, because I'm not here just to complain, I like people who come with suggestions. I would suggest that there's an amendment made to Chapter 319. I would suggest that there's an exemption placed into that bill, or into that chapter, that says if somebody does not want or does not need to tap into the line, that they have on-site water that is safe to drink, that they don't need to. I personally would be willing to still pay the $1,500 that we're being charged to tap into that line. I'll pay it. Just don't make me connect. Bypass me. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Please, name and address.
My name's Louise Soskin, and I live at 2467 Schoolhouse Lane, and I'm here to bring up my concerns about the East York Elementary School. Normally on any given weekday, there are joyful noises of students playing during recess, innocent squeals. I enjoy those sounds, and I'm used to them because I used to live behind Locust Grove Elementary for 21 years. I now live right behind East York Elementary, and this past Wednesday was a very quiet day at East York Elementary. The entire grassy area was blocked off so soil testing could take place in a few spots, which we recently found out that would be another $10,000 fee put onto the project. There was no recess, there was no outside gym classes. I started to wonder some things, and I'm wondering these things because by design, the school board cannot answer questions at the school board meeting, and there has not been really any open forums for any of our concerns or questions to be answered. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, which kind of leads to, I don't want to say hysteria, but misinformation and things going around. So some of the things that I was wondering is, what will they do when there are backhoes, earth movers, cement mixers, jackhammers, excavators, trenchers, dump trucks on site for the duration of the construction and the demolition of the project? And how is this bunch of equipment actually going to get from wherever it's coming from to the plot that is literally right next to the existing elementary school? Where will they hold outside recess and outside gym? How will they be getting, again, all that stuff there? Where will all of the extra staff come and park when Indian Rock closes and the extra 325 students get brought over here and all the staff to teach them? The other thing, too, is I went back and I saw, I believe, at the June 20th, 24 township meeting, Mr. Luciani read the quote that all noise levels emanating from the property shall not affect residential properties adjacent to the proposed project. I then looked up the EPA, and standard outside decibel is 55. A lot of the equipment that I said, which I found out from the people doing the land soil, will be used. Their average decibels are between 98 and 123. That would be all day when I'm trying to enjoy my yard and there are children in the school right next to it for 6 hours a day. Also, where are the significant number of parents that I've gone past Indian Rock at pickup and drop-off time? There's a lot of people that drive their kids to school. They're probably going to drive them across town. Where are all of them going to park when they are bringing them and picking them up? Also, what about the special events, back to school night, chorus, choirs, May days? Right now, how we are a little, petite, small, quaint neighborhood. We're not built for what is potentially going to happen here. Even the idea, the motto of the buses coming in off of Sundale, literally the walkway path is about 9-10 feet wide, and then you're going into trees, telephone poles. Not telephone poles, electric poles. There's an electric pole on my land that is literally gurneyed up by a wire that will eventually have to be moved probably to make way for the asphalt. How will that affect my electricity? And then I've searched and I cannot find any clear, concise plans of what is actually going to happen to Indian Rock. I think it's something to be considered that whatever you're going to do with East York, it should be linked with whatever the plan is, which we don't know because as a citizen, I've not been told. The school board doesn't answer, and there's not been a public forum to say what they're doing with Indian Rock. So if they're going to have to get concessions and variances for that, it should be going hand in hand with whatever's going to happen at East York, because if you do East York and then all of a sudden they can't do whatever they're going to do at Indian Rock. In closing, there are pretty renderings, but no transparency from the school board. One example of that is the school board met on Monday. At between 4:30 and 5:30, the yellow tape went up for the soil testing. That wasn't voted on and approved until 7:30 that night. So they knew it was happening. So, and I think it passed by a 5-3 vote, but clearly it was already on the agenda. It was already scheduled. The equipment was there the very next day. I would hope that the township would be good stewards of the assets, the land, and the families that are happy to be Go Trojans. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a comment. We have little control over what the school board decides to do.
Yes.
We do have a whole land development subdivision process that we go through here in the township, and there are rigorous standards that they have to follow, and they will be following them. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Yes, sir. Or ma'am, go ahead. Ma'am.
My name is Vicki Stein. I live at 4040 Brook Valley Road. This is in compliance with what that gentleman said. I can't afford it either. If you people can live on $821 a month from Social Security, I'm all for it. Otherwise, I can't afford it.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Felix Bauza. I live on 488 Sundale Drive. I apologize, I'm a little late, so it may have been already mentioned. I'm new here, new to York County, new to East York. I have an 11-year-old daughter, which Mr. Hodgkin, sorry if I said your name wrong, but you got an email about it recently. She has trouble crossing the street because of the speeding, and I find that extremely difficult. So on the north side, there's bushes from my neighbor, which is fine. That doesn't allow her to cross that way to get to the sidewalk, to get to school. Now it's at the end of the school zone before it reaches our house. So this is a mixture of what the school board has to deal with, and I've reached out to the superintendent, and what the township has to deal with. Because I kind of find it a little absurd from the conversations that I've had recently between Corporal Landings, I believe is his name, when he said he's been here for the past 17 years and this has been the same problem that he's been dealing with over that amount of time, as well as from a neighbor who introduced himself on the first day and saying since 2003 that he's had news reporters and speed study tests and all these other things that he was able to do, and still 2 decades later this seems to be an issue. So my main concern is, how do I get my daughter across one street just to get to a sidewalk? I've tried looking up with the Public Works, I've had multiple conversations with them on how to get a speed hump in place. They do not, by the criteria, we do not meet that criteria because we are less than 200 feet from the intersection and 25 feet from somebody else's driveway. Another speed study test is only going to do so much. I mean, you could sit out there and you can see that cars are flying by at all hours of the day. And it's absolutely ridiculous because even though I am right outside of the school zone, I could throw a rock from my front yard and hit the school. It is right there. So I know that you're still, viewing everything, but I feel like the speeding in general needs to be addressed, whichever way possible. I mean, I've offered for Corporal to put a cruiser on my property. I mean, that only does so much. I'm more concerned about during school hours. After school hours, I mean, it's always going to be a problem everywhere. Don't really care, but we need to care about the kids and addressing this problem before a tragedy happens instead of after. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Good evening. I'm Glenda Keller, 3449 Brook Valley Road. Thank you for your time this evening. Is it possible that the township could get a grant issued possibly to help defer some of the costs for the hookup, especially if the residents wanted to just keep their wells? And why is the water bill paid to Springettsbury Township and not to the water company? It seems like extra involvement of a payment, which will cost several dollars more by having a middleman instead of directly to the company that's providing the service. Also, is it a rumor that the $14.75 application fee really is a payment to offset a previous debt from years back for a different project? In addition, is it a waste of money to have stones put in instead of a gopher line down through? We have a gas line or natural gas line that they use a gopher to go down through our property. And it seems like if they could do that with a gopher line, which would be more dangerous if something were to happen to a gas line than to a water line. And therefore, too, it would be less upheaval to our lawns. Some people are really going to have to have a lot of digging in their lawns. And not only is this 1475 coming at a time that we didn't know was going to happen, because we have a wonderful well too, 180 feet deep, no problems, as do many other people on our street. And many are concerned, with this. So you have the 1475, plus you're going to have the expense of when they have to do all the hookups and tear up the lawns and put the plumbing in, and I think it's a pit meter, I believe it's called. I know some people won't have to have the pit meters. Our house is 65 feet back. I don't know if we're going to qualify for not having to have the pit meter. I know the reason why you have to have those is to drive by and to check to see, I guess, the numbers for the water or the gallons or something to that effect. I'd like to thank you for your time, and I hope you have real consideration for the problem of what is going to affect many people on that road that I know are going to have financial burdens. I only wish that there was something you could do to defer the payments for anybody involved in that matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to address the board? Please.
Hey, Charles.
Hello.
Hi, how are
How are
you? I did send an email, so.
Name and address
Oh,
for the record,
sorry.
please. Thank
My name is Stephanie Herman, at 3429 Druck Valley Road. I did send an email earlier today, so I do apologize if this is a bit redundant. Just going to read this. On September 9th, we received a letter from the township stating we have 6 months to connect to the public water line that was recently installed at Brookhaven Trailer Park. When this project started months ago, we were told by the water company that we were not going to be forced to hook up. The letter we received from the water company specifically stated they're only doing a survey to see if there was a need. And they reiterated, you will not be forced to hook up if you don't want to. When I spoke with Lindsay at the water company today, she said that during an audit that they did, there was an oversight. They saw that there was this ordinance in effect, which I know too much about the water ordinance now. Under Ordinance 319, 12, and 13, residences within 150 feet from a main line have to connect to York Water Company's main line and disconnect from their well. So I understand the laws, the financial needs of the water company, and financial needs and positions of the township, but I baffled that it's acceptable for the water company to just say, oops, we started construction, we realized we made a mistake, looks like your constituents will have to hook up due to this ordinance. I have a well, I love my well water, I get it tested, and I do not want, nor do I need a service that I'm gonna be forced to comply with. If ordinances are put in place and amended, why can't this one be amended? I also emailed Governor Shapiro, Joe Dorsey, and Kristen Phillips, who all reminded me that this isn't something that can be handled at the state level. I have to come and speak to you guys about it. And all of them sent me Article 26, Section 2601 regarding water supply. This part, particularly towards the end, says that certain residences shall not be required to connect to the water system pursuant to that subsection if all of the following conditions exist. And this was updated July of 2008, so I'm not sure if it means the property owner, or if it's pertaining to before the water line, so I'm also here to get clarification on it. But it says, the water system or part or extension of the system that is within 150 feet of a principal building was in existence on the effective date of this subsection. The principal building has its own supply of water, which is safe for human consumption. Prior to the effective date of this subsection, the property owner was not required to connect to the existing system. So I'm wondering if any of the residents that are here, if we could be grandfathered into that, going by the dates. And again, I don't totally understand all the verbiage of that. Right now, myself, some of my neighbors don't have the funds at the moment. I pride myself on being very fiscally responsible, and if you're a parent, I'm sure you can understand now I'm up against, do I save money for this this water line, or do I save money for this outrageous orthodontist bill that I have for my 8-year-old daughter? It's just coming at a bad time when things are rough. I just don't understand the reasoning behind the ordinance, and I just don't understand why, if a mistake was made from the water company, why, you guys aren't fighting for us. That's it.
Thank you. James, do you want to weigh in on some of the questions that have been raised, just to kind of clarify?
I can certainly weigh in. The way the ordinance is written is per state law. That's where the power comes into the municipality, within 150 feet. That's why the ordinance was written the way the ordinance was written. So to give you a little history on why there is a connection fee and then a surcharge on the water bills of $2 back in I think it was 1985, is when water lines were laid and a loan was made by York Water to the township in order to pay for those water lines. It's very standard, and if you go to any other municipality that's serviced by a private utility or any other utility, that's typically a structure that's in place. The way that those loans are paid off is through connection fees within the 150 feet per the statute, which is you've correctly laid out to the supervisors. If you read the ordinance, it was adjusted every year because there's only so many houses and so many connection points that can be made within a township. It's not like you can continually increase the fees or come back and say pay more connection fees over time. So the loan gets paid off over time, and once the loan is paid off, that's when the system or the agreement terminates and it comes back to the township. As of today, there still is a substantial balance on the loan, which is why the agreement must remain in place. Now, supervisors certainly have the ability to adjust tap-in fees and/or adjust the way the tap-in fees are paid, and that's up to you as supervisors to discuss and assess over time. But as of now, the way the ordinance is written and the way that it's in place, that is how it works as of today. So that's my legal perspective and a little history on that. So, does that help?
It helps slightly, but
To clarify, not to solve, but to clarify.
The original,
and-
I'm sorry, the original loan that York Water gave to Spring and Sperry Township in 1985 was $1.4 million to construct the original system. There's probably, I don't know the exact number, I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's around $500,000 yet to be paid to York Water.
$541,248.28.
40 years later, there's still that much owed.
Well, the original agreement was $1.4 million loan at 8.5% interest. 1985. So the 1475, as James alluded to, it goes up $25 every year per the ordinance. So in this case, the 1475 is paid to Spring and Sperry Township. Spring and Sperry Township forwards the same amount to York Water to go towards this debt service. And then on everybody's water bill in the Mount Zion district, there's a $2 surcharge every month, and York Water takes that $2 surcharge and pays it down towards the outstanding balance.
So back in 1985, and of course, none of us were here back in 1985, but it sounds like, I'm just first impression, there wasn't really a lot of thought given to how that loan was going to get paid back based on the number of possible extensions at that time. The fact that we're 40 years later and still owe as much as we do, somebody didn't do their homework 40 years ago.
It's safe to say it'll never be paid off with
At
the
this
amount,
rate.
with the amount
And
of
interest is
connections.
still accruing.
Right, and interest accruing, yeah.
So Mark made a comment earlier to me that probably $2 per water bill per month is barely covering the interest on the loan. So the loan is not getting paid off. It gets paid down slightly for each connection that we do to the Mount Zion
District.
district. Now, we did not pay extra for them to construct that out Mount Zion. It is part, or out Druck Valley. It is part of the Mount Zion Water District, was included in that whole plan back in 1985. They have just completed that section of it at no cost to the township, but we still have the obligation to pay back the $500,000 remaining, plus require all individuals within 150 feet of that water system to connect. So that's the situation we're in.
And correct me if I misspeak, James, but I don't think per the agreement, because there's an agreement and the ordinance. Typically with ordinances, we just have an ordinance. The agreement, which was signed in May of 85, it's tying our hands to continually pay and require people to connect per the ordinance. So I don't think, in a typical ordinance, the board would have the ability to waive something. I think the township would still have, if the township wanted to waive anything, we would still have to pay York Water the $14.75. And we cannot waive the mandatory connection, I don't believe.
Correct.
The way I read the agreement.
Absent changing the ordinance, and the board authorizing that to happen.
But we would,
It's an agreement with York
Between the
Water
township and
Company.
York Water.
So for that to happen, we would have to negotiate
We
with
would
York
have to
Water.
renegotiate an existing agreement with York Water Company, and they would have to agree with us.
Correct.
And not that I want to spend all evening on this, but just, I understand the logic behind our sewer connections and why we mandate that, and understand the trash collection, why we mandate that. Do we have any knowledge or understanding of why in 1985 they thought it was required to hook into public water and give up your well?
I don't. Assumption would be there was some well failure, that would be my assumption, along Mount Zion Road, and they put the system in, but that would just be an assumption.
So, John, do you know anything about the Superfund site at the top of the hill that has caused some problems for some wells?
I've read the same documentation, and first of all, the Mount Zion Water District is pretty large percentage of the township. It's almost most of the properties to the north of 30, for instance, from Manchester to Pelham. And there was a Superfund site up at Rocky Ridge Park. Harley was in there, Colt Steel. And when that occurred, they started to, the EPA said, hey, you got to get these people off well water, because many of them were on well water, as I understood it. And I don't know who told me this, but through my years here, and Mark and I are about even, somebody told me we were required to get public water up to Rocky Ridge Park, which it wasn't even close. So that was the beginning of the main water system in that location. And then I think that agreement, in order to provide public water, the township was in a challenging spot to connect to public water.
Let me make one comment. Excuse me. 8% interest on 1.4 million is $112,000 a year. Over 39 years, it's $4,368,000. So assuming we didn't have a huge tranche of houses that hooked up and paid down the loan initially to something substantially less, we paid the York Water Company 3 times what they initially loaned us. I think it certainly would be appropriate to go to the York Water Company and try and renegotiate this situation
I agree with that.
to the benefit of
Well, and I think based on the
The
fact that
residents.
we know we're never going to pay it off,
well,
the way the system is structured now is further,
Well, it's almost
Further
interest-only
impetus.
payments that we have.
Right.
why pay 8% on money that You don't
Right.
need to. So I, for one, would be in favor of us going to the York Water Company and see what we could work out.
And I think we have an opportunity too, because of their misinformation in this as well.
And it almost sounds like, again, I don't want to judge based on what we've heard, but it almost sounds like they weren't even aware that this loan was out there.
Oh, they were aware. The person who was in charge of this particular extension misspoke.
Okay, okay,
But York Water was definitely aware of.
okay.
So, assuming that we get through all of that and have a more satisfactory agreement with York Water Company, what would that do to what this situation currently presents?
Well, the ordinance is the ordinance. And you certainly have every right to amend it, but the ordinance that's in place when the fee is charged is what the ordinance, what you should be charging. That doesn't mean that the flow of payments can't be extended out. That doesn't mean that the township can't financially work out a solution to it, but the actual payment has to happen. Where the funds come from is up to the township.
So, if,
My understanding is we have 6 months from the date of that letter that went out on September 4th to put in the application. And my understanding is that no invoice will be sent out until we submit the application. So what I'm positing is you have 6 months before we have to, according to that ordinance, by law, send in that application fee and be tapped in. That's the time frame we're working on. It'd be more if we hadn't gotten this information from the York Water Company. We would have had 10 months.
Here's what I'll caution.
is that really true, though? Wouldn't it have been 6 months from the date of the letter back then that would have required it?
I think what he means is if York Water would have told them this spring, you're gonna have to connect, they would have had a little extra time until my letter came out in September 9th, or
We'd be
September.
having this conversation in May and not September.
So we could, as a board, give 4 additional months and also alter payment terms to make that payable in
Installments.
installments, like 4 to 6 months or something like that, to
Yes.
spread this out.
Yes. No question, you can certainly do that.
And any renegotiated contract between the township and York Water Company on this could be part of the equation of how those payments could be structured.
It could be, but then I'm going to ask
Then there would
the
have to be-
question of, what about those that have already connected
Yes.
under the prior fees, and how will you handle that?
That will have to be baked into a solution.
I understand. I agree with you. I just food for thought that, when these types of discussions come along, it's usually a small subsegment of
Of the larger
of
pot,
impacted, of a
right?
larger pie that could trigger a much larger issue that certainly needs to be assessed.
Because
moving
when
forward.
some residents on Barwood Road off of Mount Zion needed sanitary sewer, the township put in sanitary sewer at the residents' expense, and it was required for everyone to hook up. My septic system worked just fine, but there were those who didn't. So for the greater good of all, we all had to pay for the full cost of the installation of the sewer system, plus the hookup, plus the plumbing fee to get connected to the sewer.
Yep.
this the only water district remaining in the township?
No, there's a Mundus Mill Water District too.
Mundus Mill.
Yeah, those are the two water districts that are by ordinance.
And do we have a loan outstanding on that one?
I have to check.
You had another comment?
Amy Frederick, 3432 Druck Valley Road. I'd like to ask some clarifying questions. Does anyone on the board live on Druck Valley Road, for my knowledge?
I do not.
I'd also like to just add, I personally, our family, I understand the connection.
Just to be clear,
Yeah.
though, it's not just Druck Valley Road. The Mount Zion Water District encompasses a large area.
Correct, so
of
sorry,
people.
from
So
personal, yes.
I'm already connected in that district now.
Okay, and you
I do
paid the
live-
connection fee, and you paid before?
Well, it was paid before I bought my house. I paid the sewer connection fee when the sewer came through.
And we're talking about water.
You know,
I
I'm
hear
just-
you.
I'm just
Thank you.
explaining to you.
I know,
how
I just
this
want to
all
keep on
works.
topic, okay.
Yeah.
So I just want to clarify the connection fee, the 1,500, I know I'm estimating. I understand that digging up the road is a huge cost for the township, to say, I move out of my house and say the Hermans would move in and now they want to hook up to public water. I completely understand the connection fee. I do not understand, a lot of our homes are 1900 or predating. I personally have put in $30,000 in the last 2 years for my structural foundation that will now have to be gone through and reworked. An estimate from a family plumber, 10,000 plus. So for us to be mandated, I understand the connection, but to come off the well and now go through our old structural foundation, rework our piping, plumbing completely, potentially, will be more than that in that time frame. That is all, thank you.
Yes, sir, please.
Hi, my name's Mike Keller, 3449 Brook Valley Road. I talked to the water company, and they're telling me there's really a shortage, and now you want to put more houses on it. I don't understand that. Because when they put a mandate on your water, you can't do nothing, basically. Can't wash your car, you can't wash windows. Where's all this water coming from? I know it's hard for you to explain that, but let's face reality here a little bit. There's only so much water, and they keep putting houses in and in and in and in. Where's it all going to come from? Can any of you gentlemen answer that?
Well, I'm not actually an engineer for York Water Company, so I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe our either environmental engineer or our civil engineer could shed some light on it.
I've visited. If you didn't know, York Water Company made great improvements to Lake Redmond and improved their spillway to meet the dam regulations. But there is a pump station. Where this water comes from, it gets pumped from the Susquehanna River, goes to Lake Redmond, gets treated, well, not treated there, it settles out there. Most of that water gets pumped up to Reservoir Hill near York College, but that's how they're meeting the demand. And their job as a water supplier is to make sure they're looking far ahead to provide adequate water supply for the greater York area. And as you know, they continue to acquire more water systems, but they're pretty good at it, at managing the water system, and they're competent at it. But as far as the housing growth, we're obligated as a municipality. If a builder wants to come in, he's got to provide adequate water and sewer, and York Water Company has to, as part of the approval process, say we're going to be able to provide adequate water for these homes. And not that there has been a good amount of growth, as you know, probably in the last 30 years. And as I hear the numbers of what was paid and the number of hookups, they're pretty significant. And it's a daunting number. But growth will continue to occur throughout my lifetime, and you know, York Water Company their job is to make sure they provide sufficient water for the
But if it
citizens.
ain't there, they can't provide, right or wrong?
Well, there's a heck of a lot of water with water treatment coming out of the Susquehanna.
Well, I
That was a
fish on the
big bonus.
Susquehanna. Excuse me. I fish on the Susquehanna, and I had to get out of my boat and push it across where I used to motor across. So you can't tell me the water system's not low. In the summer we had, I mean,
Agreed. We're not California. California didn't bill any impoundments.
right,
and
I understand
They
that.
had big issues, but Pennsylvania, they're being innovative with how they could supply potable water to the citizens.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening? Yes, ma'am.
Just have a question. I live at 3747 Druck Valley Road.
And your name is?
Barbara Blank. I just lost my husband in April. So I'm just trying to survive on my own now. I'm learning everything that I have to do alone that I had a partner for. I don't understand why just the people that live 150 feet off the road have to hook up to this, and why my neighbors that live up on the hill or live behind me, why don't they have to share in this also? I just can't, I don't understand. Maybe it's just something I don't know, or it's just why is that? Does anybody know? I mean, why it's just people that live a certain distance from the roadway that have to do it? And not everybody that lives on Druck Valley Road?
I don't know that I can answer that.
I can't.
I mean,
I have the same question as to where the 150 feet came from.
I don't understand what the
But
distance came from.
I'm not trying to pass the buck here, but that was passed at the state level. So I don't know, John, whether you have a lot more history.
Well, they had to pick a distance, right?
Yeah.
So if your house is,
Pick the distance?
the state picked that distance, and I think we use it for both sewer. Is sewer the same thing? Yeah, sewer is 150 feet. Obviously, the distance away from the main, the more distance, the more cost. So they had to cap it somewhere, and they picked 150.
But because I live the distance.
You live 90 feet,
I'm
and
being-
you're not
I'm being
151?
penalized that I have to pay,
Yep, but they had to pick a distance to cap.
plus all
to-
the other ones that live.
Yep, if you were a mile from the line, you wouldn't be obligated to do that, but you're less than 150 feet. If you were, and I know this sounds crazy, if
does
you,
sound crazy to me,
if you were
especially-
152 feet, you could make the argument, because
Okay,
that's the
but
rule,
I'm at 2 feet over.
if you were a foot
I don't
over.
have to.
But you're not, obviously, because you got the letter.
Well, I'm just wondering what's less expensive, move my house back? Or just-
That's good thinking, I
Yeah,
like that.
okay.
That's-
All right,
that's
thank
good.
you very much.
Thank you. Anyone online? Anyone else in the audience? Okay, then we will move on to engineering reports. Diana?
Good evening. No updates to the report that we submitted. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
John?
Two real quick updates. As I reported, that we're still trying to close out our township campus basins. They're apparently operating now. And we had an inspection Friday with the Conservation District, and they observed that they are operating. They gave us a couple of pointers, I'll put it that way. The pointers are, they don't want, you can cut the grass on the embankment, but they don't want the grass or the lawn or the special seed mix cut more than a couple times a year. So we have to let the hair grow out on the two basins here.
Forever or just for now?
Permanently. Technically, it's like a low-maintenance grass. Now, the decision, after discussing with them, related to that, every single NPDES in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania if it's a general permit, was going to expire December 7th of this year. That means every development, whether it be Kinsley's developed there, Triplet Springs, wherever, those permits expired, and everybody was waiting to see what DEP was going to be doing. And we had a webinar where they told us that they're going to extend those permits, got to pay $500. So, given that information that they're going to extend them and you have to pay this $500, Diana's crew has a electrical lighting project that they're doing in the park. They had met with the Conservation District informally, so we had discussed it's the same fee. So we would keep that permit open for these two basins, although there's only the couple of little tweaks that we need to make to them, let the grass grow. But Buchart's going to use that same NPDES. We'll share all that information with them, and they'll keep that NPDES permit operating, and it'll be good for 5 years. If in that time we have another project like a bocce ball court, we can slide that in there. So the bottom line is the NPDES permit will remain open, and we're going to have Bucart use it for the electric project. The last thing I want to report on, and there are people here about the school, as I reported, the zoning hearing board, the next zoning hearing board is October 3rd at 6 p.m. in this very room, and the school district has applied for at least three variances: the quantity of parking, the location of the parking, and they added onto that a digital sign that would be a changeable signboard. So that meeting is coming up October 3rd, and I'll be presenting that information to the zoning hearing board, and they'll make a decision at that time.
So that October 3rd meeting then will be an opportunity for any residents, such as spoke earlier, to express their concerns about granting any of these.
Absolutely, and those, not only the people who are immediately adjacent, but anybody within 200 feet of the school district property gets notified, so, and I shouldn't say that they'll make a decision that night, because there are 3 other cases on that same evening, and if it goes too long, they can continue it. If there's lots of testimony, they could continue it, just so the board knows. Questions or comments on my report? Thank you.
Did we have any opinion on how we're supporting or opposing any of those as a township?
The townships can certainly attend the meeting and assert standing at that meeting if, depending upon what the decision is that comes about from the zoning hearing board, but.
Who would need to attend to do that?
I would say,
I'm the
John
zoning officer
would
now.
be the
so-
zoning officer that could
So
attend on
He
the townships.
can assert standing so that we could contest anything at a future date.
Absolutely, he could do that.
We should do
Gentlemen?
that. We should do that. We should certainly assert standing so we have options.
Yeah, it would be very similar to any zoning hearing board decision where it comes one way or the other. You definitely want to do that to preserve your appeal rights.
Okay,
I saw a bunch of head nods here. Don, you too?
I agree with the idea. I hesitate to disagree with our solicitor, but my understanding is that we have the right to disagree with our zoning hearing board anytime after they make a decision. We don't have to go to the meeting and tell them they're wrong.
Mr. Bishop, you're absolutely right. Yeah, no, I didn't mean to imply that you had to do it at the actual meeting. I thought the question was, should we attend the meeting to assert our position? And you can do it there, or you can do it after. There's no question.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree that we should, somebody should attend the meeting. I think, yeah, whoever, doesn't matter to me, but I think it's a good idea.
So you will be there, John.
I will be, I'll be acting as the zoning officer, not actually as the engineer.
And I will be attending as well.
Okay.
So we got coverage and representation.
Any other questions for our engineer? Thanks, John.
Thank you.
All right, next we have our consent agenda, items A through G. Are there any items that anyone would like to have removed for further discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda items A through G as listed.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Bids, proposals, contracts, and agreements. Authorization to enter into agreement with Ream Roofing to replace wastewater treatment collection building roof in amount not to exceed $67,350.
Mr. Chairman, this item is self-explanatory. The only item I'll add is it is included in the capital budget for this year.
Mr. Chairman, I move to authorize Township Manager to enter into agreement with Ream Roofing to replace wastewater treatment collection building roof in the amount not to exceed $67,350.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Next, we have authorization to enter into agreement with JF Petroleum Group for replacement of the 2,000-gallon above-ground diesel storage tank at the wastewater treatment facility in an amount not to exceed $53,345.12.
Mr. Chairman, this is slightly different. This was not budgeted, but
That's the leaking tank.
the tank failed earlier this year, and it was not anticipated. We do have money available to pay for this, but it was not budgeted.
Mark, do we have a diesel storage tank across the street?
We do. We have
That's where they're
10,000
getting it now, right?
That's where they're getting it now, but there's a 10,000-gallon underground diesel and a 10,000-gallon underground unleaded gasoline. This 2,000 above ground is at wastewater treatment, and their vehicles use it, but then also the the off-road vehicles that stay in the facility use it as well, that wouldn't be able to travel to Public Works to get the fuel.
Mark, I was looking through this. Does this proposed tank have like a secondary containment
It
system?
does.
Okay.
With a monitor.
I see the monitors and stuff. All right, I just want to make sure there was secondary containment. There's no other comments. I'll move to authorize Township Manager to enter into agreement with JF Petroleum Group for replacement of 2,000-gallon above-ground diesel storage tank, the wastewater treatment facility in amount not to exceed $53,345.12. Sourcewell contract number 092920-JFA.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have authorization to bid Township Neighborhood Park Sign Project.
Mr. Chairman, this item is included in our capital project. It is to replace the neighborhood park signs and to reflect a similar pattern that we have at this park. This action is just permission to advertise for bids.
And the signs will be as rendered here in this.
Correct.
with the color schemes as presented.
Correct.
I'll make a motion to authorize that we bid the Township Neighborhood Park Sign Project.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have a second amendment to Articles of Agreement between PA American Water Company and Springersbury Township, extending term until November 1, 2024.
Mr. Chairman, that's self-explanatory. As you recall, we did a similar action in June that expired September 1st. We continue to work with PA American Water on a updated agreement.
Do we expect a subsequent extension, or do you think this is enough time?
It's kind of in their hand. We listed what our expectations were. Now they're doing digging on their end to see, I guess, if they can be amenable to what we feel our requirements are. But again, this is just changing the expiration date, nothing else.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the Second Amendment to the Articles of Agreement between PA American Water Company and Springersbury Township, extending the term until November 1st, 2024.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No subdivisions and land development. Any communication from supervisors? Anything?
Nothing tonight.
The only thing, I just want to make sure that we don't get to the end of this agenda without discussing what's going to happen with Druck Valley and the water lines, at least know what's going to happen next on our side. We don't have to discuss it now. I just don't want to miss the opportunity. I think we need to have some kind of a plan.
My intention, based on the feedback I got from the board, is to schedule a meeting with York Water Company to discuss the 1985 agreement and go from there. And I would have James attend with me.
And my other expectation would be that as a result of those discussions, we would put an agenda item on the next meeting to talk about the potential of extending by 4 months to give them the 10 months that they would have had if the notice had been correct in the first place. And we can have a further discussion about the payment schedule at that time. Will that satisfy?
Yeah, I would just simply add the Mudis Mill zone as well. Take a look at that and see
Yeah.
whether any actions
we have to
required
take a
there.
look at that.
Just so we're on the same page, by next meeting, so the second meeting of this month, or by next
Next month.
month? Okay,
Thank you.
yeah.
Not had a chance to talk to York Water Company in a period of time.
Well, the deadline for the next meeting's information's next Wednesday, so
Yeah.
it may not be able to.
Better get to it. What are you doing sitting here?
Yes.
Solicitor's report, James.
No report for this meeting. You'll have a full report for the next meeting.
Mark, anything on manager's report?
I just want to make one point for clarification purposes, and then I have another item. Just for the folks in the audience, PA American Water Company, we just talked about that agreement. That's the company that owns the former York City wastewater treatment plant. So it's not that we're dealing with two different water source companies. This is the agreement we have for wastewater with them. That being said, I wanted to get the board's feedback, if you will. July 4th of next year is on a Friday. Typically, as you're aware, we hold our firework event the Sunday prior to the 4th. But since the 4th next year's on a Friday, I was planning on having the firework event on the actual day of July 4th. And I wanted to just see if the board had any concerns with me switching from our typical Sunday before.
I didn't know it was typically the Sunday before. I thought it was your discretion.
It is my discretion, but I just wanted the board's feedback since.
Let's not change a good thing. Whenever you want to hold it, Mark.
The only thing I would say is maybe take a look at when some of the other big places are having their fireworks, so we're not overlapping.
I think we announce now and they can move their schedule around us.
I agree with that.
Ours trumps a lot. Ours is very popular.
So if you do make the switch, we certainly want to over promote this so everybody can adjust accordingly. Would you still have a concert on
Oh,
the
absolutely.
Sunday
It'd be
before?
the whole day event that we typically do.
So you would have it on Friday,
On
not
Friday.
the Sunday before.
We'll have the Sunday before concert, but the Sunday after, we'll probably not have a concert then. We'll just move it to the Friday.
Okay, so that's how you'd move it. Okay.
Makes sense.
As long as we do ample promotion, well, more than ample promotion, so everybody can plan. Sure.
That's all I have.
Any questions? All right. Ordinances and resolutions, authorization to advertise ordinance for collection of unpaid municipal delinquent accounts.
Mr. Chairman, this is the unpaid sewer debt specifically that we authorized the agreement last meeting with Portnoy Law. This is the ordinance that outlines the rules.
I'll move to authorize advertising the ordinance for collection of unpaid municipal delinquent accounts.
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. I see we're getting 10% on those accounts. It's better than 8.5.
All right, so under old business, are there any items on here that we need to talk about this evening?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Item A, which has been on for a while, we finally came to the conclusion that Springettsbury Township Board does not have to do anything to allow the volunteer fire company to change their bylaws. So they can change their bylaws at their own will. We do not have to do anything prior.
And we're directing them to do that to remove the requirement of an audit performed by the township on their books.
They requested us not to require that. It's in their bylaws.
Yeah.
They want to remove it from their bylaws,
Good.
but wanted to make sure we didn't have to do anything beforehand. And James and I looked through.
Is Todd aware of that?
He's not aware of it because I wanted to let the board know first before I let him know.
No problem. So I'm sure at our next meeting, we'll probably vote to remove that from their bylaws.
The other adoption of new building code, we set up a work session for that. And then the volunteer tax credits, I, in this agenda, provided information that James gave on how something like that would work. So it's there, we can talk about it now, or we can talk about it at a future time.
Gentlemen?
I did have one question. I think, I'm not sure if I'm remembering that's right from the manager's report, but the manager was recommending that we do provide one kind of relief, but not the other kind of relief. The $500, is that, am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, the way, the information that I gave, which is just a draft, it's a template list that you can give relief for real estate tax relief or earned income tax relief. One has a limit of $500. The other one in the draft does not have a limit. My suggestion was we either just pick one, real estate or earned income, and then if you still want to have two options, they both have the same limit, $500.
Total? Or each?
It would be one or the other. You
One or
couldn't
the
get
other.
both.
Couldn't do both, yeah.
So yeah, you were just trying to limit our exposure.
Correct.
Right, okay. I just wasn't sure why you were recommending that, so I think I understand now.
I think it was the earned income tax was in the draft says limit of 500. The real estate tax didn't have a limit. And my suggestion was it should have a limit as well. If we're going to limit the one, we ought to limit the other.
So if you're a renter, you wouldn't want to opt for the real estate forgiveness. If you're unemployed, and not a homeowner, you're out of luck. If you're unemployed, but you own your property, you get relief there, correct?
Yes.
Am I summarizing that correctly?
And this would just, in the draft, it's just Springettsbury, and we could change it if we wanted to, but the draft says Springettsbury Township Volunteer Fire Company, Springettsbury Township Volunteer Fire Police. They're in the same organization, but they're kind of, there's not many that go to the fire scenes, but there's more to go to the fire police. I just listed it that way so it was clear.
I guess the only question I have, based on what I read, is how would this be administered? Is this like you as a volunteer apply annually and some panel determines whether you qualify, and if so, what you qualify for? Is that kind of the gist of it?
You would fill, the application has the requirements. You have to attend so many incidents, and there's all different credits, and once you get to a certain number, you qualify, and the 50 credits, you get a 50% reduction, so it'd be $250. If you get 100 credits in a year's time, you would get the full $500. You would send your application. It would have to be verified by I guess the chairman of the volunteer fire company that is true. And then it would come to the township, and then we would run it through an internal process here to issue them the refund.
So none of this would pass through for example, the real estate relief, that wouldn't pass through the tax collector's office at all.
They would still pay their tax.
Gotcha.
And then ask for a reimbursement.
Okay.
Am I stating that right, James?
You are. So if you were to implement this ordinance, it would, let's say we do it next meeting, it would start with next year. You would apply next year, but you really wouldn't see the financial benefit of it until 2026. And it does go, in the way that it's set up, and it's modeled after the county. It's also modeled after another township that recently implemented. That's how I created the draft, to keep things somewhat consistent. You annually, by resolution, come up with the standards as to what that would look like. It's a point system, essentially, and you get up to 50% and then up to 100% with it, and it's vetted by the head of their organization, goes over to what I have is Mark, or the township secretary, it doesn't matter, who then runs it internally, and then it comes to the board for final approval. But it has to happen pretty quickly in the first quarter of the year so that you can get the tax refunds processed and put forth. But the money's paid up front and then refunded.
Do Manchester and Spring Garden Township have this program? Or are they working on it? What's the status of that? Do you know?
I believe Manchester Township has it. I'm not certain of Spring Garden Township.
Okay.
I can
And
find
ours,
I thought they both said at Galford that they
I
did.
think they do.
Yeah,
I think they did. that it was brought
I
up.
think they
They
do.
both do. We were,
so this mirrors what they've
yeah,
done?
right.
Okay.
My only question is, does the supervisor that sits on the volunteer fire, no, never mind.
Aren't you on the volunteer board?
That's a Board of Auditors question.
So I have a question really for the board to consider. 'Cause, the manager gave us a nice model draft. I'm wondering why we would not want to maximize payments to these individuals. I mean, they provide, a vital service. And it sounds like there are mechanisms in place to make sure they're actually providing the service and not just, just showing up or signing a piece of paper or whatever. But if they're actually doing this work to help the township, why wouldn't we want to maximize the financial benefit to them?
What does maximize look like, Mark?
Oh, it'd be, real estate obviously would be based on the assessed value of that real estate, of their primary home.
So someone in York City could conceivably get a bigger benefit than someone living in Springettsbury Township, because the property tax there is so much higher.
Would have to be in the township.
You have to be a resident of the township.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
And I'm not sure I'm correct, but I believe that Spring Garden and Manchester Township both have a $500 limit. So we would simply be matching what they allow. But I don't know if we could go above that or not.
Right as it's written right now, there is no maximum on real estate. It's only a maximum on the earned income of $500. I just suggested to make it less, to make it even, to make it less liable to the township. That's why I suggested $500, but the board can certainly do whatever.
Don, do you have a number you were thinking?
No. No, I was just reacting negatively to the thinking that we should be trying to save money here. Because, I mean,
We're talking about how many individuals?
Less than 20? Currently, there's less than 20. Unless, does that sound
I think
about
that-
right,
yeah,
Bob?
Sounds about right.
So I guess the other thing in is the calculation of what that amount would actually be. If it's 250 or 500 is easy, based on credits. If it's whatever your real estate tax is or whatever your earned income tax is, then there's more work to do, right?
Well, if it's based on, you can go 100% would mean it's 100% of your real estate, then, I mean, that's not hard to figure out. I don't know what the average real estate tax is in Springettsbury Township. I don't have that information in my head to see, is it, where are we at?
I'm gonna guess it's several $1,000s.
Yeah.
are we talking school taxes too?
No, this is just municipal.
Probably
Oh.
2,000.
Just municipal?
Municipal.
It's like low. It's really low, isn't
Oh,
it?
okay.
Yeah, the spring taxes would be 2,000, so we're really low. And we cut it last year,
Yeah,
too.
we cut it by 12%.
I was thinking, I was thinking
It's like-
school district taxes.
It's like $150 or something like that.
So they're not gonna get 500 anyway.
Maybe some, it all depends
Some
on
might.
the value of their property. I think we should still have a point system that you have to prove you put the time in to get to 50% or 100%.
I agree 100% with that.
I think you convinced me, Don. Point system, but whatever amount it comes out to is fine.
So I can make those
So if they get
edits.
100% and that is $100, that's fine. If it's $1,000, it's fine. If it, whatever.
Okay, I'll,
Anybody else?
I'm okay with that.
Without seeing numbers, I'm just a little apprehensive to sign a blank check tonight. That's all.
I'll have more information for hopefully next meeting with an edited version of what I just submitted.
All right, that's good. So we don't have to vote on it
Perfect.
tonight, George. Anything else on old business?
I don't believe so.
Did you get a chance to reach out to York County for the 250 PA?
Yes, the president commissioner can't attend any meeting this month or next month, so I gave her the 2 dates for November and December.
There's only one in November.
I gave her the 2 dates, one for
Oh.
November, one for December.
Okay.
And she hasn't replied yet, so if she can't make those, she may send somebody in her absence.
Yeah. Okay, under new business, acknowledge receipt of 2025 minimum municipal obligation for police pension, death, and disability fund in the amount of $904,938.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Acknowledge receipt of 2025 minimum municipal obligation for non-uniform pension plan in the amount of $163,738.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Acknowledge receipt of 2025 minimum municipal obligation for Teamsters pension plan in the amount of $172,442.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are at the end of our agenda. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.